Greetings. Thanks for clicking on my lore video where I free associate a few different ideas from the game. I'm going to try to stick to a single idea this time, and that single idea is snakes. So it's only like 1% of people out there that watch YouTube who click on subscribe, so, thanks to those 1%ers out there. Snakes in this game have some connections to snakes in the real world, but we're not going to talk too much about that today. In a way similar to shamanism, the worship of snakes has been something that's been present all over the world at various times. The most important association this game makes to the real world examples of snakes is the idea of snakes as being immortal. One likely explanation of where we got this association from is the fact that a snake is able to shed its skin. This dramatic transformation always reveals fresh skin underneath, as if to be young again. And of course, this idea of eternal youth is something that's quite appealing to us humans who obviously don't have that. So this is one side of the snake, but there's also obviously another side. As beautiful as these animals may appear to us, they are equally as deadly. And we actually have a word for something when it's both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Bradley Nowell had a band. Look it up. But back in the game, when we're talking about snakes, we have to recognize something, that there's snakes that are obvious to us, and then there's other snakes that are, I think, being hidden from us. If you recall Raya asking,
something beyond the walls, like breathing or slithering scales.
So let's look at the snakes first of all that we can actually see. Somehow this guy, Rykard, makes it into pretty well all my videos. I'm not really sure why, I just feel like I like this character quite a bit. Rykard is a demigod and he's born cursed. Instead of letting us destroy him, Rykard embraces the curse wholeheartedly. Rykard willingly lets himself be devoured by this mysterious serpent god that he finds on a mountain. And in doing so, Rykard becomes the Lord of Blasphemy. So Rykard is opposed to the Erd Tree, and he's also in competition with the Erd Tree for souls, basically. But in Rykard's view, all the souls that come to him are doing so willingly because they've decided to, by their own free will, seek audience with the Lord. But also Rykard and Volcano Manor and this whole group, they're connected with recusants, right? So the invaders in the game's PvP. And because invasions in this game, basically, like, you have to allow it, I think that's kind of maybe reflected in Rykard's lore a little bit. Like, if you don't want to get invaded, you just don't co-op, and if you don't want to, have an audience with Rykard, it's optional. You don't have to even go to the area. But clearly this Lord of Blasphemy snake figure has a significant negative connotation when viewed from the perspective of the Erd Tree, which is our perspective as tarnished. Rykard's serpent god is in direct opposition to Marika and her Erd Tree, and so invaders as Reds, they're going against Marika. But what exactly do we know about this mysterious serpent that Rykard attached himself to? In Volcano Manor, we find an area called the Temple of Igle. Inside this temple, there's a large snake skin hanging from the ceiling that's looks like it's being worshipped. We also find here a mysterious serpent womb of some kind, like whatever the serpent version of a womb is, I guess. I mean, they lay eggs, I'm pretty sure. But with the magic and power of video editing, I'm able to just, look this up. It turns out this thing, serpent amnion, is what it's technically called, and this is something that exists inside eggs too, so technically, yeah, snakes would have one of these, so it all checks out biologically. Great job. Oh, and we also have to fight one of the Godskin nobles in this area, and the Godskin noble appears to be kind of worshipping this snake stuff, so what? Like, there's so much stuff going on here, we're gonna have to just pick it apart slowly. I think the only real obvious connection here might be something like this giant snake skin that we find is the snake skin from the snake that Rykard is attached to, maybe. We got one giant snake, we got a giant snake skin, So from that we might think, oh, maybe this thing was called Igle, and that's what Rykard was attached to. Great, the giant snake has a name. Now, what about this mysterious snake womb? Well, we collect this item in part of Raya's quest. Raya the Scout is responsible for bringing us to Volcano Manor in the first place. We know this item lets Raya know who her mother is. And all we really get to know is, like, when Raya learns who her mother is, she's just devastated by this news. But unfortunately, we never learn any of what this means. And the only way for us to find out would be to find out where this disembodied snake womb came from originally. And we find it in this skin with this temple, and, like, maybe the womb came from the snake, but the snake is attached to Rykard, and, like, what? And for the Godskins, we know they were followers of the Gloam Eye Queen, so somehow she's connected to all this also. Now I'm going to make an assumption here based on the Godskins' inhuman snake-like physiology, that their leader, this Gloam Eye Queen, was another type of snake creature. And then it's possible that the snake that Rykard's attached to, plus this skin, plus this womb, those things are all coming from a Gloam Eye Queen snake? And then Rykard is, I guess, the Gloam Eye Queen, or he's fused to her. And her real name is Igle? I don't know. Maybe there's more than one giant snake? One thing we do learn is that these snake soldiers that we find in Volcano Manor are actually like Rykard's kids, and that Raya is kind of like one of them, except she has this ability to, cover her appearance. So there may be Rykard's giant snake, there might be a Gloam Eye Queen giant snake, and maybe in a way similar to Rykard, at some point this Gloam Eye Queen was like attached to the snake figure. So it could be that this disembodied snake woman that we find that's Raya's mother is actually the Gloam Eye Queen, and I guess that's where that ends. Although I can't understand why Raya would be so embarrassed to have this Gloam Eye Queen figure as her mother like she is, so that's kind of weird. Like, to me, the only mother figure that would be so horrifying for Raya to have would be like Marika. So I mean, possibly this disembodied snake womb came from Marika? And if this is true, it almost indicates that Marika is something like Raya. She's like a snake that can just hide her form. I think this could be true, but it's a little more complicated. We're gonna come back. So we disconnect the snake skin from Rykard, and we disconnect this womb and put it on Marika. Where does this Gloam Eye Queen part come in? Like, it seems like there's just too many characters being connected here. And now we're looking at something where we're tempted to say that Marika is the Gloam Eye Queen. So, like, it's really hard to tell, like, where one snake ends and another begins, right? It's like we're looking into a basket of snakes or something like that. Because I think Marika definitely is a kind of snake goddess. And I think the Gloam Eye Queen was also a kind of snake goddess. It looks to me we have some kind of duality here. We either have two different snake goddesses, or we have one snake goddess with two different sides. So there's one possible thematic connection. But a snake also forms a symbol in the form of Ouroboros. It's a snake eating its own tail, which serves as a symbol of infinity, among other things. And the typical depiction of this Ouroboros is just a circular form, exactly like how we see in the game's title. And a circle itself is associated with ideas like perfection, divinity. So like I said, we've got these snakes that we can see. That's like Rykard, that's Raya, that's all her snake people. And we've got the snakes that we can't see, and this is going to be the Gloam Eye Queen and Marika, I believe. And yes, it could be that Marika's both of these figures, but I think it makes more sense if we keep them separate for now, at least. So I've already given the evidence for why I think Gloam Eye Queen was probably a snake figure based on, her apostles who are snake-like beings. What do we have showing that Marika is a snake? The first evidence is these golden bands that Marika wears around her arms. They're both snake figures. And then secondly is obviously Messmer. We have to explain like where this abyssal serpent came from. I mean, it's a snake coming from somewhere, some of his parents, we don't know, but I'm just assuming it's from Marika. And third, if you look at Marika's dress, for some reason this thing has always given me like a snake skin kind of vibe. I can't really explain it, but it is just the feeling that I get from it. Now, I mentioned before about Marika being similar to Raya, being able to hide her appearance underneath a human skin, basically. But in this case with Marika, I don't think she's hiding the snake aspect of her. I think she actually just discards this aspect. So I think one possibility when we get Marika's ascension scene, that all this gore that's all around her, like some of that's going to be, maybe some of that's the horn scent, but some of that might be just like her skin that's being shed off in a way. So if Marika had shed her skin at this scene, well, that obviously indicates that right before the scene, she was some kind of snake creature, right? A snake creature most likely created by the horn scent. So here we have to imagine Marika in her Newman form having these giant snake monsters like grafted to her in a way. She was this manufactured goddess figure by the horn scent people. But like we were talking about last time, Marika's not just a shaman Newman, she's an Empyrean shaman Newman. So I guess what I'm saying is if Marika was some kind of fused together snake creature, that she simply reverses the fusion and just discards the snake. We know about Empyreans, they're empty vessels who can be filled with various outer gods. And most likely whatever god the horn scent we're trying to get summoned or try to get Marika to host, I think that didn't happen. Because we know that Marika becomes vessel to the quote-unquote greater will. And in Marika's overthrowing and betrayal of the horn scent, I think there's got to be some more characters in the background here that are helping her that we don't get to see either. So it seems like Godfrey had to be in the picture at some point here in the Shadowlands, like before the story we get in the Lands Between later. I think Godfrey had to be helping her at this point, but maybe we'll come back to Godfrey another time. Because I think before Godfrey, Marika had another god figure that she was attached to that helped her do this whole horn scent scheme. And it also explains the other parents of Messmer and Melina. Because we already talked about how Messmer has this snake element that I think is coming from Marika. But there's another element of both of these kids which is very important, and this is the firepower. And what we have associated with fire in this game is a figure called the Fell God. You might be thinking, wait, doesn't Rykard have firepower too? And he's not associated with any Fell God, I don't think. But they did something very interesting, and because Rykard's firepower is coming from sorcery, where all the other fire in the game comes from like incantations, I think that it's supposed to indicate that they're not coming from the same source, like, if that makes sense. Like every character in this game, the Fell God is very mysterious, and we only get to know a couple little pieces of information about him. What we need to know that's important here is that the Hornsent hated the Fell God, and that Marika ended up killing the Fell God. So I think it just makes sense that at some point Marika teamed up with this Fell God and had these kids, and this would be the power that she used to overthrow the Hornsent. And then later, of course, Marika, when she no longer needs the Fell God, just get rid of him. I mean, this is just a pattern of behavior for Marika we've seen. So maybe just to summarize this, Marika was created as this snake goddess by the Hornsent. She betrayed the Hornsent with the Fell God. She had her kids, Melina and Messmer, and she would eventually betray the Fell God as well and go with Godfrey. So that seems to work fine. Now, what about some of these other missing elements? We've got the Gloam Eye Queen still to be explained, plus Melina. So let's first look at if Melina could possibly be the Gloam Eye Queen. Like, what would that mean? In the Lord of Frenzy Flame ending, we find Melina, instead of her normal spirit form, she appears to be like in a more human form this time. Her hair is a bit different, her eyes look a bit different. She opens one of her eyes and it's a gloam color. In this one moment, it appears that Melina has become the Gloam-Eyed Queen. And then the obvious question is, has she always been this Gloam-Eyed Queen? But if we try to fit Melina into always being the Gloam-Eyed Queen, we get some definite problems. The main problem is that it just seems to me like the God Hunt and all this behavior that was happening like long before Mark ever showed up on the scene. We can imagine the original Gloam Eye Queen as being some kind of, humanoid snake fusion monster. Her followers, the Godskins, what are they up to? Well, they're skinning gods, but they're also skinning other things maybe. And this skinning ritual has to be serving this Gloam-Eyed Queen somehow. So maybe this snake, instead of shedding its skin to retain its eternal youth, that she simply takes the skin of the young maidens to use for herself. And that this horrific ritual was just the way of the old world before Marika. Like, it seems to me, if anything, Marika is replacing this Gloam-Eyed Queen figure. And if Melina is Marika's daughter, like the daughter can't exist before the mother, right? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, not without invoking some kind of crazy traveling back in time plot, but we won't do that today. But we have seen things like this from this author before, so possible. What I think does make sense is, let's just say that Melina was an Empyrean like her mother, so she was a vessel for another god, and she was a vessel for a death god. And maybe after Marika killed the original Gloam-Eyed Queen, that this death god just kind of jumped into Melina. Because that type of thing we definitely do see happening. And considering we're talking about a god of death here, I mean, death itself is sort of immortal. So this is why we learned that Malekith defeated the Gloam-Eyed Queen, not killed her, because you can't kill her. It doesn't seem possible in any universe to defeat death. I mean, you can delay it, that's it. And in this game, death is associated with this twin bird symbol. This is why under Melina's eye she has this crow's foot thing going on. But there's a little bit more to Melina I think we need to discuss here, namely how she appears to us in this spirit summoned form. And this indicates to me that at some point Melina was, transformed into this spirit ash thing. And of course the details of this are lost to us, but we can make the assumption based on Melina's quote-unquote purpose given to her by her mother that it was Marika who did this to her. So it looks to me like Messmer was, locked in a box his whole life until the one day he was let out to do genocide for Mom. And in Melina's case, she was probably just straight up sacrificed at some point by her mother. So this is another pattern of behavior that we get from Marika. And yes, this makes Marika look terrible, but I want to offer some alternative explanation here. Is possible that the world was just like this when Marika inherited it. Like, this child sacrifice thing has been something that's been going on long before she ever came around. So maybe she actually stopped it. Yeah, kind of. But to go back to the original Gloam-Eyed Queen, I think that when this defeat happened, Marika had to make some kind of bargain with the universe, and this was what resulted in Melina's creation, I think. So Marika knows she can't defeat death, but she can find loopholes and control things in such a way that she has power over death, even though she really doesn't ever. Marika's failure to contain death would become Malekith's failure. He would take the burden for her. Probably heard the expression that life always finds a way, but I think in this world it's more like death always finds a way. But that's when I realized I'm standing on top of an eternal serpent that's eating its own tail. That life and death may seem in opposition, but in fact they're a union of opposites. They're just two sides of the same coin. And that one way to interpret the snake or the serpent is this exact idea of duality between life and death. And it's actually this duality that Marika seeks to overthrow in her eternal ambitions. If the serpent was a symbol of life and death combined, Marika's new symbol is going to be nothing but life. So instead of this idea of life and death existing in harmony, we've got only life, with the death part being just stripped away or hidden in the shadows for no one to see. So Marika has, made some changes. She has changed some real things, but at the same time, like, most of what she's doing is just kind of in appearance. Like, she's just On the surface, all we see is this bright, shimmering gold, but it's so bright and so shimmering that it almost seems like it's too good to be true. However, something being too good to be true doesn't usually stop people from believing it. This is our beautiful copium, but underneath that, we know that that dark side is still there. And because this dark side is always present and it's just being ignored, it has power. Like, it has the ability to just creep its way out again. And for this reason, Marika suppresses it. So there's your moment of Jung. Let me just summarize all this one more time here at the end of the video. I think the original Gloam Eye Queen could have been the snake that we see getting murdered in the cutscene. And it's possible that this Gloam Eye Queen snake creature was at one point just fused to Marika. Or it could have been they're just separate snakes and we have no way of knowing because snakes are all kind of the same. Or if maybe that's not technically true, it's just the way it appears to us. Okay, that's basically what I feel about snakes in this game. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all those beautiful YouTube things if you want to see more stuff like this in the future. And thanks for listening. See ya.